What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another video on my channel. My name is Josh Fan of ShowMeFootball.com and ArrowheadAddict.com. And tonight I am joined by the Michael Darcy of KC Sports Report and Bleacher Report to break down the Kansas City Chiefs' final 53-man roster for the 2023 season. And Michael, I'm sure you got to be pumped to be talking about the new look Kansas City Chiefs heading into 2023. Always an exciting time of the year, always a stressful time of the year as well, seeing who actually made the team and who got cut. We saw some moves today, some surprising ones, some not so surprising ones, but we're going to look at the position groups all the way down the list, talk about who made it, who was let go, and just kind of if anything stands out or what's surprising. We won't do our traditional hour to 2 hour long podcast where we talk about every single guy and give you all a scouting report. But most of you kind of get the gist, and we'll just give our most notable takes about every single position and each guy that made it. But Michael, if you're ready, we'll go ahead and get started.
Let's roll. I'm excited.
All right. Yeah. Cause me and Michael have not discussed this at all. I wanted to get our raw thoughts for this video. I know he did something for Bleacher Report earlier talking about the final roster. Did not watch it yet. You guys should probably go watch it if you want to after this, though.
It was all over the place.
Well, I was going to say, I'm sure it was an impressive performance because you basically just freelanced without knowing what the final roster actually was, and you were able to keep the fans entertained. So, bravo.
It was hard. It was really hard. And honestly, there was a lot of articles that I was reading that after we found out what the 53-man roster was, they were actually pretty accurate. But I was like, I just hope this is right because the Kansas City Chiefs never do anything by the book. They should have had that They should have had the roster out by 3. It was not out by 3. It was not out by 3. I think it was like 3:47 or something crazy like that.
Yeah. Yeah, so Michael was putting on a live show talking about the final roster just without even knowing what it was, but I'm sure it was still impressive.
I blacked out.
Rattling off different topics.
Yeah, I was just like, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, let's talk about him. That's just what it was.
And we're going to talk about him plenty here, but let's start with the quarterbacks. Let's start from the very top. So Patrick Mahomes, Blaine Gabbert. So we haven't talked since the last preseason game. We kind of hyped up this QB2 battle between Shane Buechele and Blaine Gabbert. And honestly, the Shane Buechele hype train came to a screeching halt against the Cleveland Browns in the final preseason game. I'm not surprised that he lost the battle for QB2. I am kind of surprised that he got just outright released.
Yeah.
And I haven't seen much mention that he's a practice squad candidate. I've actually seen more practice squad chatter around Chris Oladokun instead of Shane Buechele. And it's just very surprising because this was a guy that the Chiefs held on to for years and we're grooming him to be the long-term backup. And I guess after this preseason, they're just like, well, we're done. Thanks, Shane Buechele. Thanks for your time. And we'll have to see because the practice squad hasn't really been assembled yet. But it kind of seems like Shane Buechele might be done in Kansas City. And just based on his history, I would imagine he will get significant interest from other teams and other teams that may be able to offer him more of an opportunity than he'll ever get in Kansas City.
Yeah, Josh, that's exactly what I said. I think that the shot that he had at QB2 wasn't super realistic. Blaine Gabbert was going to probably be quarterback 2 behind Patrick Mahomes since the moment they brought him in. But just like you said, I was really surprised that they didn't bring him back, at least on the active roster, carry 3 quarterbacks, because like you said, they've been grooming him for the better part of the last 2-3 seasons. He's been on the practice squad. They've elevated him to the active roster. He has suited up, to be on this roster so he couldn't get stolen away by somebody else. And this long-term investment that you've been funneling, I don't want to say a ton of resources in, but that's a very valuable spot. And you would think, oh, he's just waiting for his moment. And it never came. So in my mind, it was kind of a waste of time and investment. Like, why did you spend all of this time developing him to be a potential QB2 if you're just going to let him go 2 years down the line? And Chris Oladokun, like you said, I think he's probably going to be the guy that is the practice squad quarterback. That's what makes the most sense. And he might have more talent than Shane Buechele. So that'll be interesting to look at. But I'm kind of just surprised that they've been developing this guy for so long. And I don't want to say at the drop of a hat, but they fairly quickly moved on, even though they've spent about 2 years into him.
Yeah, and it was always going to take a perfect preseason performance for him to earn that QB2 spot. It was always Blaine Gabbert unless Shane Buechele just wowed them. And unfortunately, Shane Buechele had probably the worst possible game that he could have had against the Cleveland Browns.
Yeah.
I know that one of the picks wasn't necessarily his fault, but the other one was just terrible ball security or just a terrible decision. The pick six from Juan Thornhill. And yeah, man, it's the end of the Shane Buechele era, I fear.
Yeah, it was. I don't want to say short-lived because it was not short-lived, but I mean, we
It
never
was his
saw him
third
do
training
anything.
camp, I think. It was like this third training camp.
Yeah, it was a third training camp. I remember when he was a UDFA out of SMU, I believe. I never thought he was going to amount to anything just because, I mean, hey, you got Patrick Mahomes, you got Chad Henne at the time. And unfortunately, I was right. But I also think that you put him in the right system, he could back up some quarterbacks in this league and be a pretty dang good backup.
Yeah, I think so too. I hope to see him get a shot somewhere else. Just to see him, because I want to see him in like a real game, and I just don't know if he was ever going to play in a real game with Kansas City. So we'll see. Good luck to him, though. It was an exciting saga to follow, but seems it's come to an end. Let's move on to the running backs, though. They're next on the list on the website that I'm looking at. I'm using Arrowhead Pride, by the way. Shout out to those guys for this 53-man roster tracker. But the three running backs that make it are Isaiah Pacheco, Jerick McKinnon, and Clyde Edwards-Helaire. And Michael, I see you smiling because I know this is the topic we were waiting to talk about. I'm not all of that surprised that Clyde Edwards-Helaire is on this team. It seemed like him running with the ones on offense in preseason was like, okay, let's showcase him for a possible trade. And maybe that was true, and they just couldn't find a trade partner. Nothing ever materialized. Or the Chiefs actually view Clyde Edwards-Helaire as a valuable piece of this team still. I don't agree with that. What really upsets me about the way that this running back room shook out is that, okay, Deneric Prince, he didn't make it either. He got cut, as well as Lamichael P. Ryan. Deneric Prince, I felt like for a minute there, had already lost his spot to P. Ryan. Like P. Ryan would have made the team if it, or over Deneric Prince. So I wasn't shocked by the Deneric Prince release. However, Lamichael P. Ryan getting cut, that bothers me because P. Ryan actually came in, was signed late training camp or mid-training camp, was brought in, thrown into the offense, looked fantastic in preseason. Like you could have not asked him to perform better than he did in the snaps that he got with the Chiefs in the preseason. And yet, despite that, despite what you would call a perfect performance for Lamichael P. Ryan, he is cut. And so what frustrates me is, why even waste the dude's time if he's going to ball out in preseason just for you to still keep Clyde Edwards-Helaire over him? Like, why are we wasting time with Lamichael P. Ryan? Why even bring the guy in, waste his time if he's going to ball out to the point he deserves to make the team? He performed better than Clyde Edwards-Helaire. If you were just going to keep CEH anyway, like, what's the point, really? That's what bothers me the most about cutting Lamichael P. Ryan.
I think what bothers me the most about keeping Clyde Edwards-Helaire is that if you just took the labels out of it and you just watch the guys play, there is no chance that Clyde Edwards-Helaire clears Lamichael P. Ryan or Deneric Prince. Mm-hmm. He doesn't clear either of those guys. But the football politics come in. He was a first-round draft pick. That is the reason that he's still on this team. That's the reason why he will be on this team unless they can somehow find some team dumb enough to give up any asset for him. I don't think you could get a 5th or a 6th round draft pick at this point in time. I really don't. Why would you? Like he's a running back that, you know, what you see is what you get. I'm kind of frustrated because I just think that the Chiefs, you know, gave in to the fact that they haven't had a successful return on their investment. Clyde Edwards-Helaire has been a bum. He's been a failure. He's been literally the opposite of what Isaiah Pacheco has been. And, you know, the long tenure of great running backs in Kansas City, Clyde has been the opposite of those guys. And listen, am I harsh on him? Yeah. Should I be as harsh on him? Probably not. But because he can't control the fact that he was a first round draft pick and that he's still on this roster right now. But when you watch a guy like LaMichael Pirine light it up in the preseason, or Deneric Prince, who got a lot of usage on special teams, what does Clyde offer you that is more beneficial to having him on the team than either of those other two guys?
Yeah, real kind of almost like coach's son type of vibes with Clyde Edwards-Helaire. It's like, what
Yeah.
did he do to show that he was better than those guys? And I'm sure I'll get comments from people saying, "Oh, Clyde Edwards-Helaire can still be decent for this team. Clyde Edwards-Helaire was good at the beginning of last season." Like, just kind of they're making their case for CEH, and I get it, but you can't say that he deserved his spot on the team. You can't say that he outperformed an Eric Prince or LaMichael Pirine in training camp or preseason. He just didn't. And so I don't feel like he deserves to make the team. And like you said, Michael, he's only here because he was a first round pick. That is the only reason he is still here. Every single running back that the Chiefs have brought in since CEH has been here has been better than CEH in the snaps that they have played. I mean, the list goes on. Derek Gore, Darrell Williams, Jerick McKinnon. They had Jerick McKinnon hiding behind Clyde Edwards-Helaire for an entire season before the playoffs in 2021 until they finally realized, oh, shoot, we have Jerick McKinnon. Like, this guy's good. Like, and he ended up being better. Isaiah Pacheco, the rookie, ended up being better. Like, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, he's not good. Like, and we saw them force feed him in the preseason. He was an eyesore to watch. I don't get it. I really don't. And I feel bad for Michael Pirine because I felt like he was awesome. I felt like Michael Pirine, if he had made the team, I think he would have helped this year. I really do. Especially if like Pacheco or McKinnon got hurt. Like, I would have been confident giving Pirine the rock. I am not at all a fan of the idea of giving CEH the rock in the regular season. I'm just not. I feel like Pirine was better, and it's criminal that they would bring him in and waste his time after he put on a show in preseason just to give CEH the spot anyway by default.
I wonder how much he'll even play. The Chiefs had him deactivated so many times last year, and they signed, Melvin Gordon midseason, and they had Rojo. But even then, those guys were deactivated. So I really do wonder how much Clyde will actually touch the ball this season. I mean, if they deactivated him for the Super Bowl when he was fully healthy, I have a hard time thinking that he's just going to play more than like 5 or 6 games.
Yeah, because you got to think about the injury history too.
Yeah.
He just hasn't really been healthy for an entire season.
He really is, really quickly, he really is, and man, I hate to say it, he is maybe the worst possible player all up into one. He's vertically challenged. He can't see over the line. He gets hurt. He doesn't have speed, quickness, burst. He really is just how did he get here? I think that's the best question to ask.
How was he a first round pick? His athletic testing was so bad even coming out of the draft. It never really made sense. I did not like the pick from day one. I really didn't. But that's enough on the running backs, man. We had our spiel. Wide receivers. I don't think there's any surprises here. Kadarius Toney, MVS, Sky Moore, Justin Watson, Richie James, Rashee Rice, Justin Ross. And congrats to Justin Ross for finally actually making this roster. He did it officially now. We all suspected he would make the team, but it's just awesome to see the story that has been Justin Ross going from what should have been a top 50 player in the draft in his class to getting hurt, people doubting that he'd ever actually make it onto an NFL field. Got hurt with the Chiefs his first season here, missed last year, and then puts on a show in preseason, and here he is making the team. So congrats to Justin Ross. But of course, Justin Ross would not make it without the demise of some other receivers, one of them being Amir Smith-Marsette, who actually was traded to the Carolina Panthers for a 7th-round pick swap. We both said that Amir Smith-Marsette was really good, and it just didn't seem like there was going to be room for him here, but he could latch on with another team. Well, that's exactly what happened. He latched on with the Carolina Panthers, and the Chiefs get an asset back for him. It's not much. It's a 7th-round pick swap, so basically they're just upgrading their 7th-round pick, but better than nothing. And Amir Smith-Marsette finds a new home. I got to say, though, Michael, since we didn't talk since the last preseason game, Amir Smith-Marsette performed so well. Even in the preseason finale, I was clamoring for the guy saying we got to find a spot for him on this team. And unfortunately, you want to talk about roster politics, Justin Watson making the team over Amir Smith-Marsette. I am not a fan, but it is what it is.
That's exactly what I was going to say. I think Justin Watson is kind of like Clyde in a sense of they just have the coach's trust for whatever reason. And I like Justin Watson. I don't think he's a bad player. But I think when you watch a guy like Amir Smith-Marsette light it up in not one, not two, but 3 preseason games after having a good training camp, you can't find a way to maybe get him in as like the 7th wide receiver. I've barely heard Justin Watson's name all off season long. I know he caught a touchdown in that second preseason game, but part of the thing that's frustrating is that Amir Smith-Marsette flashed in the preseason and brings more of the unknown factor. We kind of know what Justin Watson is. He's not going to do too much, but he might have some big 3rd down catches or catch a touchdown pass when you kind of least expect it. He's lower down on the totem pole of options for Patrick Mahomes, but he's still a reliable guy. Amir Smith-Marsette, I think, was so interesting because his skill set and what we were able to watch him do in the preseason, I think at least deserved a look with Patrick Mahomes during the regular season. That's kind of why I'm frustrated, because I think when you're looking at the other 2, or I guess the other wide receivers in the group, I don't have a problem with any of those other guys making it, but I would have maybe liked to see Amir Smith-Marsette win out over Justin Watson for that 7th spot.
Yeah, I pretty much agree. It's just a shame. This was a numbers game. There was too many guys, and there just wasn't room for Amir Smith-Marsette when any other year, you pick any other year, he would have made this team. So just kind of bad luck for the Chiefs and Amir Smith-Marsette in that regard.
Yeah, it sucks.
Yeah. But we'll move on to the tight ends. So the Chiefs kept 3 tight ends, surprisingly, because they kept 3 tight ends and 3 running backs only. I thought for sure they'd carry 4 at least at one of those positions, but when we'll get to the defense eventually. But they kept 6 linebackers, and they also kept they kept 6 linebackers, which is a little bit surprising, but we'll get to that later. Offensive line, though, they kept 10 linemen. Not a surprise. Donovan Smith, Joe Tooney, Creed Humphrey, Trey Smith, Jawan Taylor, Nick Allegretti, Prince Tega Wanago, Lucas Niang, Mike Calendo, and Wanye Morris. So
Mike Caliendo surprised me.
Yeah, I was gonna say that they cut Darian Kennard, the Chiefs. What was he, 5th round pick? From just a year ago. He is done, and that's in favor of Mike Caliendo. So that was a little bit of a shock. I'm also surprised Lucas Niang made it. People were talking about him potentially being dangled as trade bait or not making this team. Well, he sticks around, and I think he gets the edge over a guy like Darian Kennard because Lucas Niang, I think, is in the running to be your swing tackle. He also offers, we've seen him be serviceable at tackle in the past. Darian Kennard was always going to be a guard in the NFL. I think we saw that pretty quickly. And Lucas Niang can play guard or tackle. So there's more versatility with Lucas Niang. So, yeah, that's the way it shakes out, though. But Darian Kennard, he's gone after just 1 year with the Chiefs.
I think I knew that Kennard's job was in trouble, not this year, but last year. He was playing really deep into the preseason. And at the time, what was it? Austin Wiley. Was it Austin Wiley? Andrew Wiley. Goodness gracious. Andrew Wiley was
mixing him up with Austin Ryder.
Yeah, who also got cut today. But Andrew Wiley was our right tackle. And the thought process after the draft was, Darian Kennard could be the right tackle of the future. He was a guy that, I think popped off the athletic matrix chart. And, the Chiefs thought, you're coming off of getting Creed Humphrey and Trey Smith in a draft, and you got this guy. Like, we're just adding pieces to this puzzle. And Kennard just never worked out. Last year, he was not really able to do anything. And once you kind of saw him play deep into the 3rd and the 4th quarter in this preseason, I didn't think he was going to get cut, but this isn't the most shocking thing ever. He just hasn't panned.
Well, not only that, but he was inactive. He was a healthy inactive basically all last season. I want to say he might have played in like 1 game down the stretch. But even then, I think he played at guard, not tackle. And in the preseason, when he played tackle, I'm pretty sure he struggled. So, yeah, it's a shame. A lot of people liked the pick at the time. Looking back, though, the pick that they traded out of to get the pick that was acquired to get Darian Kennard, they could have had George Pickens. They instead trade back one with the Steelers or to fall behind the Steelers. Steelers get George Pickens, Chiefs get Sky Moore, and they use the other pick they got in the trade to get Darian Kennard.
Is what
Kind
it
of
is.
tough. Yeah, we'll see. I'm not gonna make it seem like I'm giving up on Sky Moore yet, but
No.
George Pickens would be real nice on this team right now. But
Yeah.
we can't keep looking backwards. But let's get to the defense, defensive tackles. There's some intrigue here. So 5 defensive tackles: Derek Nottie, Treshawn Wharton, Keandre Coburn, Matt Dickerson, and then of course the newcomer from today, Neil Farrell, who was acquired through trade with the Las Vegas Raiders. The Chiefs send over a 6th-round pick, and they get back Neil Farrell, who I'll get to in a second. The Chiefs ended up cutting Danny Shelton, which surprised me a little bit. I thought Danny Shelton was going to be a contributor for them this year. I really did. And it seems like they chose Neil Farrell over Danny Shelton. Also, Matt Dickerson made it. I thought maybe Danny Shelton would make it over Matt Dickerson too. Yeah. And then also Derek Nottie. Like I would have even preferred Danny Shelton over Derek Nottie. But it is what it is. And maybe Danny Shelton returns on the practice squad. But I'm intrigued by the Neil Farrell Jr. pickup because this was a guy that was described as an elite run stuffer coming out of LSU just a year ago in the draft. He was a 4th-round pick to the Las Vegas Raiders. And it does make you question what's going on with him just a little bit when the Raiders are this willing to deal him not only just a year after he was drafted, but also to a team within its division. But I like the upside here. I'm hoping that the Chiefs are able to get something out of him and he can fill snaps in the middle of this defense. But another thing that this trade told me is that the Chiefs are prepping to start the regular season without Chris Jones.
Yeah, I think that's kind of the unfortunate part about this trade. The defensive tackles, I was surprised that Danny Shelton didn't make it either, but I honestly thought that they were going to have some serious thoughts about Treshawn Wharton. And just because his injury history, he's still trying to rehab and come back. So I don't know how much he's going to play. Honestly, you could probably put him on the PUP list and, that'd probably be okay too. But apparently they think that he's closer to returning than I do. But I thought that Shelton was going to make this roster. I actually thought that it was going to come down to Treshawn Wharton or Danny Shelton. I didn't think Matt Dickerson was in the running at all. Quite frankly, I hadn't been paying much attention. I've been watching the Matt Dickerson tape this training camp, but I do think that, like you said, the Farrell trade, they're trying to beef up the interior because they don't think that Chris Jones is going to be back within the next 3 weeks, or I guess within the next 2 weeks when they start the regular season. And is that concerning? A little bit. But I also think that, adding pieces, although they might not replace what Chris Jones brings, it's all hands on deck. You need somebody to at least try. And I think Farrell's a good option. And he's going to add something in terms of run stuffing. I mean, Derek Nottie and Farrell, that's a pretty good combo. And I'm excited to see what happens.
Yeah, regardless if Chris Jones is back or not, I'm just glad to see them add some talented depth. I like the prospect of Neil Farrell Jr. I believe he had a less than favorable rookie season with the Las Vegas Raiders, but the Raiders have also been kind of a disaster when it comes to developing their draft picks over recent years. Maybe a fresh start and a change of scenery, and Kansas City will do him well. I like adding some more talent into this group because the depth behind Chris Jones was not good. And if you're going to be without Chris Jones, even after the Neil Farrell trade, it still looks like one of the worst defensive tackle rooms in the league without Jones on it, but it's a little bit better than it was before. And there's more upside now with Neil Farrell in the fold.
Yeah, they're banking a lot on their linebackers and DBs. That's for sure.
Yeah. We'll get to linebackers in a second too, because I mentioned that they kept 6 of them. And now that you even mentioned that might be some insight into why they kept 6 linebackers. But let's talk defensive ends. George Karlaftis, Mike Dana, Malik Herring, Felix Anudike-Uzomah and BJ Thompson. I wouldn't say there's any shock here. However, they did release 2021 fourth round pick Joshua Kando. I guess I would say I'm a tad bit surprised that they kept Malik Herring over Josh Kando because I thought Josh Kando showed more growth in training camp and preseason than Malik Herring did. Kando even had a sack in the last preseason game. I thought he was making a push. It seemed like he was coming into his own a little bit. But I can't say that Malik Herring or Joshua Kando showed so much that like I can argue against them keeping Malik Herring. And I know the team has really liked Malik Herring for a couple years now. But I mean, regardless, those guys are always going to be towards the bottom of the depth chart. Really, the big thing here is trying to get by until Charles Omenihu is able to return after his 6-game suspension. And we'll see, man. They're going to be leaning a lot on their young guys, George Karlaftis and FAU. And then their most experienced guy is Mike Dana. We'll see what happens, man.
Yeah, I mean, the defensive end room is going to have a lot of pressure. That is with or without Chris Jones. I mean, they have a lot to prove. I like Felix as a pick, but I think it's going to kind of take him some time to develop into a serviceable defensive end. It wasn't until like week 9 or 8 last year where George Karlaftis started to catch his stride. And so I'm kind of expecting that same thing to be true for Felix. It's going to take him some time to, get used to playing in the NFL and get used to going up against the caliber of tackles that he's going to be going up against. And so I think the defensive end room, nothing was too surprising. Kando getting cut, I don't hate it because I also just don't think that Kando was ever going to amount to anything. I think he had a lot of raw talent, but he's been in this system long enough to where we would have at least known that he had something to offer by now, and he just didn't. BJ Thompson's interesting, though, because he's a guy that I think the Chiefs have a plan for, but I don't really know what to expect. I'm not super high on him, but maybe the Chiefs think that they have something in BJ Thompson. But I just see kind of maybe even a more raw version of what Joshua Kando is. He's a freak athlete, but did he even do anything in college?
Well, he started his career at Baylor and then ended up having to transfer down to SF Austin.
Yeah.
So BJ Thompson to me seems like Joe Cullen's version of Mike Dana. Mike Dana was a guy that was on absolutely nobody's radar coming out of the draft. But at the time, our defensive line coach was Brendan Daly. And Brendan Daly was like, I love Mike Dana. I told the staff, like, I need to get my hands on Mike Dana. And Mike Dana ended up being a pretty productive player for the Kansas City Chiefs, especially for a 5th-round pick. BJ Thompson, I feel like, is Joe Cullen saying, all right, now get me my Mike Dana, my guy that I think I can develop into exactly what I want in this defensive line. Because BJ Thompson is a freak athlete, and he's one of those guys that I think has a high ceiling as a designated pass rusher for this team. His frame does not scream a guy that's going to come in and be stout and defend the run, but he's quick as hell off the line. He showed some bursts in the preseason off the line. He got a sack in the 2nd preseason game. And so I don't know what he'll do this year, but he's going to be a project, and the Chiefs were always going to keep BJ Thompson because that's Joe Cullen's project that he's working on. I don't know what he'll do this year, but I do like keeping him around and seeing what happens. And then one more quick note on Kando. I could definitely see Kando still latching on to the practice squad. I think he's a prime practice squad candidate. Felt I should throw that in there.
He'll probably be back on the practice squad, but I mean, they've been sending him up and down, I'm pretty sure, since he's been here.
Yeah.
So.
I feel like Kando, he'll get on the practice squad just kind of as a break glass in case of emergency, like bunch of injuries at defensive end, and then like they bring Kando up and he has to play.
Yeah. I think the defensive end room definitely isn't super strong, but hopefully we see a couple guys emerge that we didn't expect and just hold the fort down until Omenihu and Chris Jones come back.
For sure. All right, linebackers. They kept 6. Nick Bolton, Willie Gay, Drew Tranquil, Leo Chanel, Jack Cochran, and then the undrafted free agent Cam Jones. Jack Cochran doesn't surprise me at all because he contributes a lot on special teams. So that's not a surprise as far as linebackers go, but I am surprised they kept 6, and the 6th guy is Cam Jones. I believe he went to college at Indiana. So congrats to Cam Jones for making it on, because he also made it on mostly due to special teams and Dave Tobe. So, Dave Tobe always gets his pull with a couple guys every single year. He has a couple roster spots reserved for guys that he wants on his special teams unit. Cam Jones is one of those guys.
I'm not sure how many linebackers the Chiefs usually take. I was surprised.
Usually five.
Five? Okay. Something about seeing 6 was definitely a little bit off-putting today. I was like, dang, like that's a lot, especially when you only carry 3 running backs and 3 tight ends. So I was kind of surprised to see 6 linebackers, but I don't have a problem with the list. I wasn't really following too much outside of the 4, Willie Gay, Nick Bolton, Drew Tranquill, and Leo Chenal. I think those are the,
because in the regular season, that's going to be their actual rotation. I would be
Yeah.
shocked if Cochran or Jones actually saw snaps at linebacker.
Yeah. But, like you said, perfect special teamers. They'll get in and do the dirty work, and Dave Tobe's got his guys.
Yep, for sure. All right. Cornerbacks. Don't think there's any surprises here either. Trent McDuffie, L'Jarius Sneed, Jalen Watson, Joshua Williams, and then Nick Jones, their 7th round draft pick. Nick Jones got hurt in training camp, and so we didn't really see him in the preseason. But he was having a good training camp by all accounts before he got hurt. He has a hand injury that he has a club on. It sounds like Andy Reid, or they talked to Andy Reid, and he made it sound like that he'll be okay to play even with that injury. I got to say, though, I don't know how much Jones will contribute, and it's a little bit of a shame that a guy like Khalif Halassi had to get cut, because I thought he showed some good stuff in preseason, and he, I think, is a prime practice squad candidate. But I'm not upset at all with the cornerbacks that they kept.
Yeah, I butcher his name every time. I think it's Khalif Halassi or Halassi. I'm not sure. Like you said, he's going to be a prime practice squad candidate. Looked really good in the preseason. K-State defensive back Echo Boydo could also be a good candidate for the practice squad. He looked fairly good in training camp in the preseason. Not super surprised with the cornerbacks, but yeah, there was definitely a lot more depth in that room than I thought there was going to be.
Yeah, I think my one concern, though, is that L'Jarius Sneed knee injury that the team has kind of been mysterious about, and he didn't play any preseason games. And we all talk about Chris Jones being out for the regular season, starting versus the Lions in week 1. If they don't have Sneed or Jones, that's going to be rough.
Yeah, you can't make sacrifices at every position. And right now it kind of seems like the Chiefs have a lot of guys that aren't going to play or, have injuries and can't play. And you're leaving a lot of trust into really young guys to do the job. And we saw, last year in the AFC Championship game, those defensive backs like Joshua Williams, they did the job. But, how much trust do you want to have in a second-year Trent McDuffie to lead your cornerback group?
Yeah, for sure. We saw the rookies last year hold the fort down when guys like Sneed went out, because Sneed, he had to come out of the AFC Championship game. Jalen Watson, Trent McDuffie, Joshua Williams, those guys held it down. So hopefully they can do that again if need be. I feel like if L'Jarius Sneed's injury was that bad, the Chiefs would have put him on IR by now, and he would have missed at least the first 4 games. But this tells me that they're confident that he's going to be able to play, or at least be back within the first 4 games of the season. So hopefully it's not that bad. Also, I think I forgot to go over the tight ends. I think I skipped over them. Maybe I didn't, but
I think
Travis Kelce.
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, Travis Kelce, Noah Gray, Blake Bell. Forgot to mention that. I did mention that they carried 3 tight ends. I just forgot to say who they were. No Matt Bushman, which bums me out just a little bit. I liked Matt Bushman and his receiving upside. He also had a touchdown in the last preseason game, and I'm just like, man, it'll be nice to keep Matt Bushman on this team. But nope, no Matt Bushman. Also a prime practice squad candidate, though.
Yeah, but it almost seems like the guys of the Chiefs eventually do call up, like Justin Ross or Jody Fortson's a prime example. They never get called up right away. It's always go to the practice squad, earn your keep, develop even more. And when we feel like you're ready in a year or 2, you'll get the call. And it almost seems like Matt Bushman is going to be a guy that they keep around with the hope that next year he turns into, a guy that can be the fourth option at tight end.
For sure. All right. Last but not least, safeties. Justin Reed, Brian Cook, Shamari Connor, and Mike Edwards. The Chiefs did cut Deion Bush, who was a stalwart special teamer last year. But with them drafting Shamari Connor and then bringing in Mike Edwards, it was kind of hard to see him making this team. That's 4 safeties right there. I know the Chiefs only have so many practice squad spots, but I could also see Deion Bush being brought back to the practice squad because he also provides a lot of special teams value, and I think Dave Tobe also likes him. We'll see, though, but not surprised at all by the 4 safeties that they decided to keep.
Nope, not either. I think you actually did upgrade at all of those positions, too. I think Mike Edwards is a really good guy to have. I haven't really heard much about him this offseason, but I'm excited to see what he can do.
Yeah, he just seems like a really solid addition. Comes over from Tampa Bay. Seems like he has a knack for creating turnovers and getting those game-sealing interceptions. And I hope he brings that over to Kansas City as well. Definitely a really, as far as like 3rd or 4th safeties go, really good guy to have on your team.
Yeah.
So then there's special teamers, I guess. I know I said last but not least, but we'll talk about the special teams. No surprises. James Winchester, Tommy Townsend, Harrison Butker for long snapper, punter, and place kicker. I guess shout out James Winchester. I think he's the longest tenured Chief, if not Travis Kelce. I know James Winchester's up there, though. Back another year as the Chiefs long snapper.
I feel confident now, guys. We have our guy. He's back. So, yeah. But I will say that Tommy Townsend might not be on this team after this year, but that's new agent. The price has gone up on Tommy Townsend, but yes, right now he is the punter for the Kansas City Chiefs. I might have just thrown a complete loophole into whatever you were going to say, but yeah, that's my thoughts on Tommy Townsend.
I mean, yeah, I know there was some concern about maybe shedding his salary in the future. So it's interesting you bring that up. He is an all-pro punter, guys, so it's kind of something you do have to worry about. But we'll cross that bridge when we get there. He's on the team for another year. Just going over the guys that got cut, though, since we didn't mention everybody. DiCaprio Boodle, Matt Bushman, Jerrion Ely, Ty Freifogel, Isaiah Gavings, Jawan Green. Most of these guys I haven't heard of. Lamar Jackson, the cornerback, Truman Jones, the defensive end, Darian Kennard, we talked about him. Cornell Powell, seems like his time has come to an end. Kendall Blanton, Michael P. Ryan, like I said, defensive tackle, Daniel Wise, Shane Buechele, of course, Chris Oladokun, Cole Christensen, the linebacker, safety, Anthony Cook. They did talk about him being a practice squad candidate. Apparently the Chiefs really like him, but he was waived. Assuming he clears waivers, he could be back. Echo Boydo, talked about him already. Joshua Kando, defensive tackle Phil Hoskins. Then they released Austin Ryder, Danny Shelton, Deion Bush, traded Amir Smith-Marsette, and then Chris Jones is placed on the did not report list. So Chris Jones actually doesn't count against the roster right now. There would have to be some kind of corresponding move whenever he does decide to come back. And then Commissioner's exempt list, Charles Omenihu, since he's suspended, doesn't count against the roster at the moment. But yeah, that's the review. Those are all the guys that the Chiefs got rid of today. And that's the 53-man roster. So, Michael, are there any other thoughts, anyone that we didn't talk about that you felt like you had something to say?
I think we covered everything pretty well. I will say that this video in specific went a lot better than my live stream did. We had notes. we knew what the final 53-man roster was, so we were able to give good feedback on it. Not too many surprises, but I do think that the big names that stick out were the Chiefs getting rid of Shane Buechele, Deneric Prince, and Michael P. Ryan. Those are really the big 3 that come to mind when I think of guys that maybe got stiffed. Matt Bushman's another guy, so that's to be expected when you have to make roster cuts. It's a really difficult time of the year, but those are the guys that stick out, at least in my mind, as guys that probably could have made this roster.
Yeah, the Chiefs keeping 7 wide receivers really kind of threw a wrench into things. They didn't think they'd have this many guys. I can't imagine heading into the offseason. And so they just had to make room in other areas.
Yeah, yeah. But I'm excited. 7 wide receivers. Whew, that's going to be fun.
A lot of options, a lot of options. But with all that being said, guys, that is our review of the Chiefs' final 53-man roster heading into 2023. But before we wrap up, Michael, why don't you go ahead and let everyone know where they can find you?
Absolutely. You guys can find me on YouTube at KC Sports Report, obviously. The Instagram, KC_Sports Report. Twitter at KC Sports Report. The personal Twitter and Instagram is at the Michael Darcy. And also check out my stuff on Bleacher Report or just go to the YouTube channel. I basically repost all the Bleacher Report stuff. So, yeah, you can go see my thoughts on what the 53-man roster is going to look like, even though you just heard it right here. But go ahead and do it anyway.
Yeah, there you have it, guys. Make sure you go check him out. I'll have all his stuff linked in the description. As far as me, you're already here. Go ahead and hit that subscribe button. If you haven't already, hit the notification bell. Like and share so more Chiefs fans can find this, and they can check out my work on showmefootball.com and arrowheadaddict.com. And we will see you all in the next one. Go Chiefs!